YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the debut project behind Davey Suicide, which is the self-titled 2013 album Davey Suicide. Now, back in April, I reviewed their second album, Worldwide Suicide, with Jackal Goldkick, and he liked that project somewhat, but I definitely gave it a rave review. I was pretty smitten with that project. I definitely liked the taste of what I got from them, so I decided I'm going to mess with a little bit more and see what their debut album is like and see what other hits they have to their claim. And for the most part, it basically kicks ass. This is another album from Davey Suicide that's going to wind up getting a high score. I virtually looked after it. There's a lot of stuff that goes along with it to the point where they just did not. The thing about Davey's Suicide is just the fact that they don't necessarily have like a lot of biographies about them. So a lot of this is just kind of on the go, just like that. Where Jackal Goldkick and I's Worldwide Suicide review was basically the first review by Davey's Suicide on YouTube. And now this is basically going to be the second. So there's just not a lot of hubbub about Davey Suicide. They're kind of like, I feel like you might be able to hear like the occasional hit from them on the radio, but they don't drop albums very often. So, and even then on top of that, they don't pump out like a ton of singles. So it's just kind of where you can hear them, but it's just kind of more of like a niche market and kind of things that have like the territory as far as like word of mouth and kind of that word of mouth and that type stuff, just in terms of the territory that, especially in the rock world, it kind of feels that way. Where it's interesting to kind of get word of mouth through the rock world, just because for the most part, rock radio is pretty ambient even now, despite how some folks say that rock is dying or is dead. The thing about it is I feel like Davey Suicide is an ambient voice of like 2010s rock and metal music, and they carried themselves throughout a good portion of the decade. When I look at things like Korn and Marilyn Manson, bands like that, Linkin Park, and other bands like Rob Zombie that kind of got bewildered and more lazy with putting out projects as far as that kind of went. So they definitely were a new face of like the 2010s, but it's unfortunate that this band does not have an overabundance of projects out. The thing about this project, it doesn't have a ton of promotion attached to it, which is really too bad, because I felt like this album was just kind of like a mall sample kind of food teaser where you just get one and it's like, hey, this single is so damn good that it really felt like the project kind of killed its buzz just right off the bat by not doing anything other than just the one single. I can never really back and get behind like albums only having one single anymore. There's just no excuse to kind of do that. I feel like for the most part, unless the budget is just really minimal, you should always try to have at least two singles heading into the first album. It just goes that much further because it really kind of showcases someone to be like a one-hit wonder pretty quickly. But in Davey Suicide's case, this time it worked, but it just kind of made me a lot hungrier for like trying to get more singles by them to have more hits that you would hear on the radio, because Generation Fuckstar is really good, but we'll go ahead and talk about that as a single. So Generation Fuckstar really has like a kind of beehive, kind of swarm kind of feel towards it in the background. It's really kind of felt like a real like crazy kind of swarm kind of beat in the background, but then it also had like an up-tempo, really kind of quick-paced and furious kind of guitar song or guitar tempo on there, and I definitely felt like this is just excellent showcase of what the album would have to offer. It has a great hook on there, and this felt like Marilyn Manson's energy from like the golden age of grotesque and Hollywood days. And there's a number of songs off this project that have a lot of telltale similarities to Marilyn Manson back in his early 2000s vibes, where it kind of has like that same architecture about it, as far as like kind of having a lot of similarities in the choruses, and that's pretty good, just because I appreciate kind of getting like this gothic metal type stuff, despite the fact that this album really doesn't do a lot of gothic metal. I mean, it does it in like the single and like two or three other songs, but for the most part, to me, this is just backyard kind of hard rock music that you would hear at a social shindig where there's a bunch of people and just like a gathering of folks, and you just have beers and stuff like that. Just an outdoor kind of gathering type thing. definitely kind of music cranked. You're just kicking back, not so much like travel sense or car sense, but just kind of more this yeah, just a real kind of summer and autumn kind of shindig kind of situation. I like the vibes about it. There are a few songs for the ladies on here. There are a few electronic songs kind of in a light club sense. So there is some other stuff going on. But okay, so Spotify is not working. I'm kind of wishing that it would be. I'm kind of having problems with Spotify. Spotify doesn't want to work. Son of a bitch. So, yeah, to talk about like how some of this project actually kind of works. I think I described Generation Fuckstar, but just to talk about a few other of these, I feel like Uncross Your Legs and Kids of America kind of have like an electronic type sense in the pace of their song, and it really kind of has like club sense and that type of stuff. Just a lot more kind of professional kind of outgoingness, just something in a more formal setting, more so than just like in a personal kind of property sense of like being at your house or being at a buddy's house or something like that. But it kind of just has, I do like when rock music kind of has like social kind of gathering type stuff, not just at like a pub or a bar or something, but when it actually has like a dance club or a nightclub in mind. I feel like Davey Suicide at least covered that. Despite how lightly they did, I still feel like it works. I still feel like it works. Hustler Queen was another up tempo song that I felt like could have been a nominee for like the second single. Definitely real good energy about that. Nice song for the ladies and stuff. Just a nice kind of flirt of a song. And definitely like the tempo on it. This was about as quick as Generation Fuckstar. Just the same kind of vibes. Nice hook on there. And trying to think of another one that was kind of quick like that was Grab a Gun and Hide Your Morals. This one really gave me Marilyn Manson kind of vibes that had a lot of similarities in the hook. And One More Night reminded me of Deuce. I mean, definitely in the verses, I just felt like that. This the high pitched kind of singing and how that went in the verses reminded me a lot of like a Deuce song or an early Hollywood Undead song. I just saw a lot of Deuce in that. And then in like the hook, it kind of reminded me of 303, just a type of electronic type bop that you would have heard in the early 2010s, that type stuff. I felt like Six Suicide was kind of like a hard rock kind of just single type song. Usually in the singles, the riff is not that heavy, but that's kind of what it reminded me of in Six Suicide. So there's just a number of hits on here that kind of have some good moments, but in terms of just like a complete catchy single as good as Generation Fuckstar, I really found myself being kind of hungry for something more that could have actually happened. Now, it's not to say like all the songs I listed to you are pretty damn good, but the concept behind it is if you have not heard of any of these just through airwaves or something else, or the word of mouth that you're getting your details from is not quite as hip to these sorts of things, it's not really, I mean, it takes away from it just because it has to do with more exploring. But that's usually the problem of an album that only has one single about it. I mean, I know that this was Davey Suicide's first album, and they were really kind of off to the wayside. It seemed like really kind of, I don't want to say low budget, but like this kind of very scant and kind of like build towards how the project was supposed to turn out. But Davey Suicide is pretty low key for the most part. So that's just kind of the concept there. But um, I'll go ahead and list the 9 songs out of 11 I recommend to you. Once again, Spotify is not working, so I can't really look at the track list. So I'm just going to have to describe the ones I did enjoy. So Generation Fuckstar, Kids of America, Uncross Your Legs, In My Chest is a Grave, and that song has a really nice hook. That's one of the better hooks on the album. Hustler Queen, Six Suicide, One More Night, Grab a Gun and Hide Your Morals, and Godhead Killer. So there's basically 11 songs on the album. There's 3 skits or 3 songs that are less than 2 minutes that are kind of seem like skits. I really just counted it to there being 11 songs. There were really only 2 songs out of the remaining 11 that I didn't enjoy. One of which was kind of like, I think, like I'll Take a Bullet for You, which was kind of like a rock ballad, but I don't know, it just felt like a little bit too dramatic in the sense of that, but I wasn't digging that song as much, but I can see the emphasis behind it just to kind of considering that there were all these up tempo and kind of social numbers to kind of have something a little bit more meaning, but I just didn't connect with it. But yeah, there's just a number of things on here. I really felt like the execution was pretty well put together. I really feel like I don't know if they put out singles on the Put Our Trust in Suicide EP. I know at least Generation Fuckstar was on there. There might have actually been another single, but I do at least feel like the songs from this project are pretty excellent. That's kind of the situation about it. You've got your electronic songs that can be out for a social outing. You've got a couple like songs for women with like Hustler Queen, and there's like another one, In My Chest is a Grave, and you've got like kind of just like some up tempo, really kind of good cuts like Generation Fuckstar and Grab a Gun and Hide Your Morals, Godhead Killers, and like there's one other one I was saying, Hustler Queen. So there's just a number of good moments that Davey Suicide has, multitudes of angles that they can cover, and they do it. And that's really good. I'm glad that they do these angles well. It really kind of kicks ass to be able to get it. So I'm going to give this album, me liking 9 out of 11 songs, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. I would give it like a 9.5. I thought about giving it a 9.5 just because it didn't have 2 singles, which I could do, but I don't know how much it is to nitpick about there not being more promotion. I kind of want to do it, but it's the fact with how many of these songs are that good. I mean, it's just not every day that you wind up liking, over 90% of the project, 9 out of 11 songs. That's pretty damn good. So I have to give them credit for that, for once again, them having some hits. I really like the gothic metal type feel and just the overall energy and just kind of crass and just furious energy that they had for most of the way through, and just the kinetic concoctions that they had. There are just a number of good things about what they kind of fucked around and did. So that's definitely some good stuff. The social score, though, I'm going to have to give, like, despite the fact that I gave this album a 10 out of 10, I'm going to give the social score like a 2.5 out of 10. I'm really kind of disappointed that it didn't have something more to kind of be on the radio and have just be like a crowd pleaser and something to kind of gossip about and say, hey, do you know this song type thing. It's really kind of more pick and choose and find for yourself type stuff, which I don't always appreciate, and you should know that. This is kind of the concept. But the social score, if you don't know, is just how well, if you're introducing this to your friends, how well you think it might go over. It's just kind of, without singles, how that goes. But so in terms of the future, Davey Suicide has not dropped an album since 2020, and it seems like they're kind of dropping albums like every 3 years. They dropped one in 2014, one in 2017, one in 2020. So hopefully we'll get another one in 2023. Haven't really heard and don't really know what they're up to, but hopefully that'll be the case. But yeah, this is excellent stuff.